Good afternoon. I stand before you today as the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund, an institution that has, for more than 7 decades, stood as a cornerstone of global economic cooperation, discipline, and shared prosperity. The IMF is not a political actor, it is a partner built upon trust, transparency, and responsibility. Our mission has never been to dominate or dictate to nations, but to support them in building stronger, fairer, and more resilient economies. It is in that spirit that I address a matter of growing concern, the question of Burkina Faso's financial obligations to the International Monetary Fund, totaling $1 billion. This matter has become a source of public debate, political tension, and misunderstanding. Therefore, it is our duty to speak clearly, factually, and respectfully about what is at stake, not only for Burkina Faso, but for the principles of financial integrity that hold the world together. The IMF's relationship with Burkina Faso has deep historical roots. Over the past decades, we have supported the Burkinabe people through programs designed to stabilize the economy, encourage investment, and improve living standards. Our engagement was based on mutual respect and shared objectives to promote fiscal discipline, sustainable growth, and poverty reduction. When the IMF extended a loan of $1 billion, it did so in good faith, not to exploit, but to empower. The funds were meant to serve as an engine of growth, to invest in education, healthcare, agriculture, and infrastructure, the backbone of a developing nation's prosperity. We recognize the challenges Burkina Faso was facing: climate shocks, regional insecurity, and global market volatility. And we acted swiftly, providing emergency assistance under flexible financial instruments with the understanding that repayment would follow an agreed-upon schedule once stability returned. However, recent statements from the leadership of Burkina Faso, including public remarks by President Ibrahim Traore, have raised concerns about the government's commitment to honor these financial responsibilities. In recent months, the IMF has sought dialogue with the Burkinabe authorities to review repayment arrangements. Our representatives have proposed options for restructuring, extended grace periods, and offered technical support to help the government manage its obligations without jeopardizing domestic needs. Yet, our efforts have met silence and resistance. Official communications have gone unanswered. Our staff have been denied access to key economic data. And more recently, public declarations have accused the IMF of conspiracy, neo-colonial intent, and fabrication regarding the $1 billion loan. Let me be perfectly clear. The IMF does not engage in conspiracies. We deal in facts, not politics. Our work is guided by data, transparency, and verifiable agreements. The loan extended to Burkina Faso was fully documented, approved by the Executive Board, and publicly disclosed under the IMF's financial transparency policy. Every transaction, every tranche, and every condition was recorded, reviewed, and audited. To deny the existence of this loan is to deny the principles of accountability upon which global finance rests. This situation is not just about numbers, it is about trust. The IMF functions on the foundation of confidence between nations. Every member state, from the smallest island to the largest economy, contributes to and benefits from that trust. When a member country refuses to fulfill its commitments, it undermines the very framework that allows the international financial system to function. We must understand the IMF is a cooperative institution, not a creditor in isolation. The resources we lend come from the contributions of 190 member nations, contributions made by their taxpayers. When a nation defaults without dialogue, it affects not just the IMF, but every member country that stands behind it. Therefore, this issue transcends Burkina Faso alone. It is a test of our collective adherence to fairness, transparency, and shared responsibility. We continue to extend an open hand to Burkina Faso. We do not wish to isolate the Burkinabe people. We do not wish to punish or humiliate any nation. But let it be understood, the IMF will uphold the rule of financial integrity. If Burkina Faso continues to disregard its repayment obligations, we will have no choice but to initiate measures consistent with international financial protocols. These may include 1. Suspension of IMF technical assistance and funding programs. 2. Restriction of access to new development financing from international partners. Coordination with other financial institutions, including the World Bank and regional development banks, to align responses. 4. Potential sanctions and limitations on foreign currency transactions involving IMF-linked accounts. These are not steps we take lightly. Sanctions are never our first option. They are our last resort, used only when dialogue has failed and accountability is refused. We urge President Ibrahim Traore and his administration to return to negotiations immediately. The IMF remains open to flexibility. We can revise schedules, restructure payments, and adjust conditions, but we cannot accept denial or hostility in place of dialogue. Let me emphasize something crucial. This is not a confrontation between the IMF and Africa. Africa is not a continent of debt. It is a continent of opportunity. The IMF has worked hand in hand with African nations to design policies that encourage investment, strengthen currencies, and protect the poor. In the last decade alone, we have supported African economies with over $100 billion in financial assistance. Many of these programs have lifted millions out of poverty, helped stabilize inflation, and attracted global investors. Burkina Faso can and should be part of this success story. But that requires partnership built on truth. The IMF cannot continue support if its agreements are called fabrications or plots. Such rhetoric may win applause domestically, but damages the nation internationally. Investors listen, banks listen, and confidence once lost is not easily regained. To the citizens of Burkina Faso, I wish to speak directly. You are not our adversaries. You are our partners in development. The IMF has no interest in undermining your sovereignty. We have no agenda other than helping your country achieve financial stability and inclusive growth. The resources we provided were meant for you to build roads, hospitals, schools, and systems that serve your children and grandchildren. Our call for repayment is not a demand for punishment. It is a call for accountability, the same standard we apply to every member nation, from Europe to Asia to Africa. A nation's strength lies not in rejecting global cooperation, but in demonstrating discipline and transparency within it. The IMF stands ready to work with Burkina Faso again, but only through constructive engagement. We propose the following immediate steps. 1. Formation of a joint IMF-Burkina Faso Financial Review Committee to examine the current debt position and verify all disbursements and repayments. Development of a revised repayment plan aligned with Burkina Faso's current fiscal capacity and economic priorities. 3. Commitment to quarterly transparency reports on public spending and debt obligations. Engagement in dialogue with regional partners, particularly the West African Monetary Union, to ensure stability and coordination. These steps are not demands, they are pathways to restore confidence. Burkina Faso can still choose cooperation over confrontation. The IMF remains an ally, but an ally that insists on accountability. We must also see this issue in the broader light of global financial fairness. The world is facing extraordinary challenges: wars, inflation, debt crisis, and climate change. Developing nations are bearing a disproportionate burden. The IMF is working tirelessly to reform our instruments, increase flexibility, and expand access to concessional financing. We understand the pressure leaders face when balancing domestic priorities with global obligations, but fairness cannot exist without responsibility. If one nation rejects its obligations, it sets a dangerous precedent for all others. We must remember solidarity without discipline is chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, the relationship between the IMF and Burkina Faso does not have to end in discord. It can still be a story of reconciliation, understanding, and reform. President Traore has an opportunity not to defy the world, but to lead his nation responsibly within it, to demonstrate that Burkina Faso is not isolated, but engaged, not defiant, but disciplined, not weakened, but wise. History will not judge us by our rhetoric, but by our results. So I call upon the leadership of Burkina Faso to re-engage with the IMF, reaffirm your commitments, rebuild trust with the global community. We will be there to support you, but the first step must come from you, because cooperation is a bridge built from both sides. The IMF remains committed to fairness, transparency, and partnership for all our member nations. And as Managing Director, I reaffirm that commitment today firmly, clearly, and respectfully. Let us choose dialogue over division, responsibility over rhetoric, and partnership over isolation. Thank you.